Hello and welcome back to another episode of Generation Films. My name is American Ben. Yes, I know this subject has been debated to death, including last season on this channel. But given everything that's happened in The Mandalorian in the past few episodes, I think it's worth revisiting. When it's all said and done, should Baby Yoda, Grogu, end up on the dark side of the Force or the light side? Well, I personally think he's the perfect choice for the next major Star Wars villain, and I'll explain why. Now first off, I acknowledge that there's no reason to rush Grogu's story along. As a matter of fact, he can become the focal point of the Star Wars universe as we move into the next era of the franchise. If the next trilogy of Star Wars films features an adult Grogu in some way, that also doesn't mean that the concurrent series that take place before the rise of the First Order can't still follow Grogu's childhood and teenage years. In other words, while yes, the feature films will have to pick a side for Grogu, if he's presented as an adult, we don't have to also jump to that point in the Star Wars vehicle set earlier on in his life. Heck, maybe the next films will see a Grogu still grappling with his light and dark options. I also personally would love to see a teenage Grogu in some sort of show or movie dealing with the douchiness of the boomer Jedi and the lasting damage to his psyche that stems from him being dropped as a baby. And yes, I know that not everyone dropped as a baby ends up screwed up. I mean, I eat people, but to be fair, I wasn't really dropped so much as I was spiked. But I digress. Grogu is a great character, if merely for the fact that Yoda was a great character and a beloved figure all the while his background remains shrouded in mystery. We've always wanted more Yoda, and we're getting that now via Grogu, so no need to rush through his childhood. Now, I think most people are probably hoping for Grogu to end up being a great hero of the Republic and ultimately a steward of the light side of the Force. And I am here to crush those people's dreams. However, we've seen some hints that Grogu definitely is predisposed to some dark side behavior. He pretty readily uses the Force to get his way, and he's big on the whole choking people thing, not a quality you want to see in a sexually repressed Jedi. That said, all beings in the galaxy are vulnerable to the dark side of the Force to some degree, and choking fetishes. And as Grogu is still just a baby, it's hard to use examples of his behavior thus far to make confident claims about what path he will choose to follow. When it comes to my personal opinion though, yeah, I kind of feel like Grogu falling in with the remnants of the Empire and their dark side ways might serve Star Wars best. Here's the thing, we've already seen good guy Yoda. We know how that goes. How interesting could it possibly be if in the end we just get the same wise old, slightly appetizing green gremlin with maybe slightly different personality traits? If Grogu goes the way of the Jedi, to me this would be a boring outcome. I don't want to be so simplistic as to pretend that there's only two options and that the only way to make Grogu an exciting character is to turn him dark. But there's only two options. Some might argue that all of Din Djarin's efforts to show Grogu the way and teach him honor and kindness would be for naught if Grogu ended up becoming a Sith Lord. To that first I say, good, so what? That will kind of add to the shock of it all if, despite growing up around people with anti-imperial sentiments and despite us rooting for Grogu, he still turns. The second thing I would say is remember, it's not like Grogu is being raised by the Jedi. Sure, the people around him are not fans of the Empire, but I'm not sure they're entirely thrilled with the Republic either. Cara Dune definitely isn't. Mando couldn't care less one way or another, and the rest of the characters that partner with Mando are former agents of the Empire. And when you think about it, Mando is definitely not raising the child in the ways of the Jedi. I mean, he's a bounty hunter, he kills for money, he even sniped Jawas right in front of the little guy. And while yes, I think that this is good, healthy fun for any child to take part in, it's probably not something that the Jedi would support. Point is, there isn't much reason thus far to think that Grogu would have a leaning one way or another, or to assume that Mando's fathering is leading him to the path of the light side. Actually, given Grogu's chaotic childhood, one filled with abuse and abandonment, one would think he's especially vulnerable to the dark side. I know this all sounds a bit too much like Anakin's character arc here, and I'm not going to pretend like there's never been a major character to go from light to dark before. However, I'm going to throw something at you, and go with me here. The Darth Vader arc is awesome. I think we're due for another conversion, this time one that we weren't sure was going to happen. So yes, I'm rooting for Grogu to fall under the spell of the Sith. As I said, this would be way more interesting than just having him be another hero. However, my reasoning goes deeper than that. For me, the main rationale for making Grogu the franchise's next dark side adherent is that, well, it's hard to make good bad guys. Villains have to be imposing, menacing, and at times seemingly omnipotent in order to set the stakes high and really convince the audience that the heroes are threatened. Star Wars has largely been pretty competent at creating believable and imposing villains. Darth Vader was mysterious and seemingly invincible at his introduction, and just when his vulnerability started to show, Palpatine entered into the picture to offer audiences an even more terrifying antagonist. Palpatine was an exceptionally creepy and palpably malevolent baddie. So much so that he was able to sate audiences' thirst for delectable villainy for the entire prequel trilogy as well, with some help from Darth Maul and Count Dooku, of course. And yes, Kylo Ren was also a really convincing villain in the new trilogy, especially at first. The voice, the mask, the power, everything was executed well.
Show me again the power of the darkness, and I will let nothing stand in our way. Show me.
And when the man behind the mask was shown to be human, Snoke came onto the scene to pick up the slack. Snoke did retroactively kind of lose his luster though because he was killed off so easily. The point of all this is that Star Wars has tons of iconic, well-written and executed villains. The problem is that at this point it's going to be hard to be original. From Grand Moff Tarkin to General Grievous to Jabba the Hutt, we've really run the gamut of evil characters. So yeah, the writers of the next films could just invent someone original to fill the role of the villain, and if done well, I'm sure that audiences will invest in the character. But it seems to me that Grogu is just such a good option. We're already connected to this character. We're already emotionally invested in him. Some of us want to eat him. And so watching him turn to the dark side would be a much more impactful experience for us than being introduced to a new, unappetizing bad guy would. The world over has fallen in love with Grogu, has celebrated and rooted for him. If he becomes a villain, audiences would be so confused about whether they should root for his death, or hope for him to switch back to the light, or perhaps then again end up somewhere in the middle. Pretty sure I just contradicted my whole "there's only two options" thing, but whatever! And best of all, the members of Yoda's species, though mysterious, are supremely powerful. Grogu could end up being the most powerful and intimidating villain of all. And with the graying of the lines between right and wrong, Republic and Empire in present-day Star Wars content, it would be fitting that a member of a species that we've come to assume is naturally good, naturally light-side inclined, would abscond to the dark.
Have you ever seen one of these? From years past.
You know, with that last point in mind actually, perhaps Grogu, though falling to the dark side, wouldn't necessarily be wrong. Perhaps he'd have a point. After all, when I look around the galaxy today, I see a republic that is losing its mandate to rule, that has neglected many of its peoples, and betrayed its stated principles. Is it possible, thus, that a turn to the dark side by Grogu wouldn't necessarily mean that he becomes the villain? Anyways, let me know what you think about all of this down in the comments below. Please do give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Hit that subscribe button and that notification bell so you don't miss a thing. For now, my name is American Ben, and I'll catch you next time. Generation Films, peace.